All right. I think we are ready to begin. So hello, Soroptimists and guests. Thank you for joining our stakeholder engagement training. Before we start, please take a moment to connect to your language channel. You can find this by locating the interpretation button on your Zoom screen. Typically, it's located on the bottom ribbon. So find the interpretation icon that looks like a globe. Click on that and choose your language. English speakers should do this as well. Also, please note that today's training session is being recorded. And a link to the video and the PowerPoint will be shared with members in an upcoming Best for Women newsletter. Following the presentation, we'll have time for your questions about the content presented. So to submit a question, please type it in the Q&A area of our Zoom. This item is also located on the bottom ribbon. We'll read select questions aloud and we'll try to answer as many as possible. Similar questions will be consolidated for the sake of time so we can respond to as many as possible. Finally, please feel free to share any comments, experience, or observations related to the topic by using the chat feature. Or you can use it to say hello, as I see many of you are. So due to the number of participants today, we'll not be able to answer all the questions in the chat. So please remember to put your stakeholder engagement questions in the Q&A. So let's get started. I'm Nicole Simmons, your Director of Leadership and Volunteer Engagement. And I'm here today with Aisha Brown, your Chief Impact and Engagement Officer. Thanks for joining us today to discuss stakeholder engagement and how we use it at SIA to get the work of our Federation done. But first, you may be wondering, why are we discussing stakeholder engagement? Some members feel this topic's too corporate for SIA and that it takes away from the fun of being a Soroptimist. But even though being a Soroptimist is fun and it's exciting and we do wonderful work, SI is an organization and we use business concepts like stakeholder engagement to run our organization. Additionally, earlier in 2022, we surveyed region governors on what content our members are seeking. We heard that members want insight into how the board and staff interface. So we felt that discussing stakeholder engagement would give members this insight. And also, if you want to engage your club and your region members more deeply, this presentation will show you how. Finally, you'll be more informed about stakeholder engagement as a result of our presentation today.
For those of you who had the opportunity to attend earlier this year the training on club operations, this graphic may be familiar to you. It gives insight into how SIA headquarters annual planning process works. And stakeholder engagement is at play throughout this process. The board reviews, evaluates, and modifies the strategic plan based on what members want and value. And then we do some environmental scanning. Environmental scanning is the process of assessing a multitude of things that could affect our organization's future, such as trends concerning age, the nonprofit industry, other service clubs like ours, and more. We also look at things like global pandemics, the economy, elections, and other things, and see how those factors may impact our organization. This process focuses SIA on what is relevant to our strategy and our future. In partnership, the board and your senior staff inventory what's new, what's emerging, or what's important. Scanning and trend analysis allow us to make recommendations to the board on new initiatives, programs, and policies annually. And the teams working on these initiatives develop stakeholder engagement plans for each initiative to ensure member engagement. All of this hard work rolls up to this, what you're seeing on your slide. Here is a snippet of SIA's fiscal year 2022 and 2023 tactical plan, showing the strategic pillar, the strategic outcomes and objectives, all taken from SIA's strategic plan. And then they're mapped to the tactical plan, and then mapped to key performance indicators or metrics. By the way, these are the same key performance metrics that align on or align to your region and club roadmaps. So they may look familiar to you if you're looking at this snippet. And this is a snapshot of some of this fiscal year's projects. And these represent the organization's key initiatives. So before we begin to really delve into today's presentation, let's take a minute to test your understanding of stakeholder engagement via a few polls. Okay, poll number 1, the definition of stakeholder engagement. Which definition most closely defines stakeholder engagement? 1, stakeholder engagement is how informed stakeholders are on an organization's key initiatives. 2, stakeholder engagement is the set of actions designed to seek and react to feedback and input on the organization's overall direction. 3, stakeholder engagement is how actively stakeholders volunteer on an organization's initiatives. So pick the one that you think most closely defines stakeholder. How are we doing with the reaction to the poll, Lydia?
It looks like we have a little over 100 folks answered. We will give it another 3-second countdown.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. 3, 2, 1.
Thanks, Nicole. So what's trending in terms of responses? Oh, okay, I can see it. So it looks like 80% of you selected number 2, and that is the correct answer. So good job. And we'll close the gap for everybody else during this presentation. Okay, so we have another poll, and we'll wait for that to come up. So poll number 2, What is a stakeholder? A stakeholder is a person most interested in the organization's overall direction. A stakeholder owns shares or is a proprietor of an organization. Stakeholder is the term used in most instances to refer to individuals or groups who have an interest or role in a project, program, or portfolio, or are impacted by it.
Responses are coming in. And we'll give it a countdown of 3, 2, 1.
Very good. So most of you are spot on with your response to this poll. And the third selection, the third option is the correct answer. Okay, so we will do one last poll. Who is accountable for ensuring stakeholder engagement is well executed? Number 1, SIA's board of directors. Number 2, SIA's executive director and CEO. Number 3, any project sponsor.
Responses are still coming in. And we'll give it a countdown of 3, 2, 1.
Great. This one can be a bit confusing, and I'll speak to this a little bit now. So it is natural that most of you would select the board. The correct answer is any project sponsor. There is a split between strategy and operations, and that is how the board and staff interface. So at the point where it is being decided what work will be done, what the organization's key focuses are, that is very strategic in nature, and the board approves that via the strategic plan. It is at that point that the staff then develops tactical plans to carry out the board's vision, and project teams are chartered. Project teams include a project manager and a project sponsor. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, because it then turns back over to staff to carry out that work and to make it occur, it falls onto that project team or the project sponsor in particular to ensure that a stakeholder engagement plan is developed and is carried out, because that is very operational in nature. So I'll move on at this point, and thanks for playing and participating with us.
Yes, thanks for taking our polls. So let's now take some time to confirm your understanding of some key terminology related to stakeholder engagement. So stakeholder engagement, it's a set of actions designed to seek and react to feedback and input on the organization's overall strategy, or I'm sorry, overall direction. A stakeholder engagement strategy identifies the needs of SIA's member segments, and the project sponsor is vital in ensuring those business needs are met. Aisha, you're on mute.
It would be good if I took myself off mute so you can hear me. A stakeholder is any person who has a stake or interest in a project or is impacted by it. Stakeholders typically exist inside or within and outside of an organization who's leading the project. And project teams identify the stakeholders for the projects they lead and how their work will impact stakeholders, considering several criteria, including number one, the relative influence of the stakeholder to change how things are done. Next, the degree of interest that the stakeholder is likely to demonstrate actively. And lastly, the likelihood of the stakeholder to support the project. At SIA, we identify our stakeholders beyond just the category of member. And instead, we segment our members into the following categories, typically on projects. The board of SIA's board of directors, region governors-elect, region chairs, club presidents, club treasurers, and then members.
So SIA operates by using a project management methodology. Project managers and project sponsors lead project teams working on our critical initiatives. The role of the project manager is to ensure the project is delivered on time and within budget and scope. Now, while the project sponsor is accountable for ensuring that projects are carried out effectively and deliver the objectives that meet the identified needs. The sponsor also ensures a well-defined stakeholder engagement plan is executed. Now, at SIA, project sponsors are members of your senior leadership team, comprised of Executive Director and CEO Michelle Burnett, our Chief Financial Officer Sanjay Sharma, Chief Impact and Engagement Officer Aisha D. Brown, and our Chief Marketing and Development Officer Kimberly Adams. And your senior leadership team is involved throughout the life cycle of the projects they sponsor, work cross-functionally, and continually validate projects' business cases. So now that we've taken some time to define important terminology, Aisha and I will spend some time on how stakeholder engagement works.
Thanks, Nicole. Before engaging stakeholders, we first try to understand who the people affected by the project are. And we begin through a process called a stakeholder engagement analysis, wherein all of the stakeholders for a project are identified. During the stakeholder analysis, the project team anticipates any shifts or changes that may occur, and we assess how stakeholders will react to these changes. And then we determine what their ability to influence the project is. Next, the project team plans communications to determine how they will engage stakeholders throughout the life cycle of a project. The project team also agrees to update plans based on any stakeholder feedback they receive. So, for example, if we are planning something with a timeline associated with it, and we get feedback from our stakeholders that that timeline might not be ideal because of other things happening within the region or across the Federation at that same time, we will revisit that timeline and shift it based on that feedback. The benefit of communicating is that there are no surprises when the project launches, since the right message reached the right people at the right time. Stakeholder analysis also allows the project team to identify any risks to that project early on, and it allows the project team the opportunity to proactively mitigate any of those risks. So this is a good graphic that shows how stakeholder engagement mapping might look visually. A stakeholder engagement mapping exercise is a really good tool to identify all of your stakeholders and how often you should communicate with them. Stakeholders who end up or appear in that upper right-hand quadrant where the star is should be regularly engaged. And those are the individuals who have the highest interests in whatever project is being worked on.
There we go. Planning allows staff to ensure we're effectively engaging all of our SIA stakeholders and allowing enough time to do so. Planning also allows staff time to determine the most appropriate way to engage you, be it a survey or meetings or written updates. So here's a good example of a stakeholder engagement plan that will help determine how and when to engage stakeholders. Now, as I mentioned, the presentation will be shared, so you can also download this free template if you're interested in it, or you'll be able to recreate it.
Project success means different things to different stakeholders because stakeholders have a variety of vested interests in the outcomes of a project, depending on what their role is. These interests determine their perspectives of success, which in turn really influence how satisfied they will be with the outcomes of a project. To align stakeholders' interests, examining and sharing the value of the project with each stakeholder and uncovering what success means to them and agreeing on measures of success are important. The compromise is acknowledging that success may look different to different stakeholders depending on what role you hold in the organization. And those agreements are made with these stakeholders surrounding the vision of success earlier on, so that there's no disappointment at project launch.
All right, well, this brings us to the end of our formal presentation. So we're going to take some time to answer questions. Before we do so, I just want to go over a few of our ground rules. First, please use that Q&A button to ask questions relevant to stakeholder engagement, and that Q&A button is located on the bottom ribbon. If you have other questions that are unrelated to today's topic, please feel free to email them to siahq@soroptimist.org. And we'll endeavor to answer all the questions, but in case we run out of time, you can feel free to email them to Aisha@soroptimist.org.
Awesome. So we do have a few questions. And I'll just remind you that if you put any of your questions in the chat, to please put them into the Q&A so that we can see them. First question, what is the definition of a project sponsor? So the project sponsor is really the person probably pretty senior in most organizations who ensures that the vision and outcomes of the project are adhered to. So most projects have a business case and visions of success, and the project sponsor's role is to ensure that at project launch, those visions of success and that the business case were maintained and upheld and delivered. And again, the project sponsor is also the person on a project team who ensures that stakeholder engagement occurs. And also the project sponsor is there. I call the project sponsor the muscle on the project team. And what that means is if the project team encounters any barriers to getting their work done, they call on the sponsor to help them. And if they're grappling with something on the project team, as a team, the sponsor comes in and supports and brings resolution. So the next question is, what is the definition of a project? So as you heard in this presentation, we have adopted, SIA headquarters has adopted a project management methodology. And what that means is that we get work done per a defined process, which means a project is initiated, planned, executed, monitored and controlled and closed through a formal documented process. A project has a timeline, a start and end date, and all of the deliverables on that project are managed per that timeline. And a project has a project manager who ensures that that timeline is adhered to, and that the scope is adhered to, and that the budget of that project not go over established budget.
Yes. Allison, could you bring the slides back up? If you could pop up slide, I think it's 8, that shows an example of some of our projects that we're working on this fiscal year here at SIA. And
Sure thing. Let's see. I think that's the slide you're looking for, right?
I can't wait, it's coming. Yes.
Great.
Yeah, so there you can see this again. These are just a few of the things that we're working on, and we have it laid out with the project. We define our start and end dates. If there's going to be a kickoff date, you know, our fiscal year runs September 1 through August 31st. You know, we can't unfortunately start everything on September 1. So we have to space it out a little bit. Some projects end up carrying over, don't just fit nicely into the 1-year time frame, that we might have to roll some over as well. Then we list out our resources, our PM, the project managers, and then who are the rest of the folks on that team. And then we have our project sponsors as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Allison.
Susan Heron is asking, you've talked about before the project gets off the ground, so there are no surprises when it launches. What about throughout the life cycle or life of the project? So indeed, surprises or things that you may not have anticipated at the launch of a project occur during a project. And that is where the monitoring and controlling processes kick in. And we control them. We look out for things that may pop up that we didn't plan for, and we proactively address those things that occur that we didn't plan for. And if it means a shift to the project schedule, we shift the project schedule to be able to accommodate those shifts or changes. And if I didn't answer your question, Susan, please come back into the Q&A and add some clarity so I can make sure I give you the response you're seeking. Thank you. So someone is asking what the primary purpose of this webinar is. And the primary purpose of this webinar is to, one, give you insight into how we get our work done, because we're a team. We want to work more collaboratively. We want to be transparent about how we get our work done and our processes, because this is your organization. But there are a lot of questions coming out of last year's region conferences around how the board and staff get their work done, how we interface. So we felt like starting with stakeholder engagement was a good starting point to begin to shed light on how we work together. Another purpose of this webinar is so that you can use some of the tools, processes that we're sharing on today's call to get work done locally. I started my career as a project manager, so I say project management is in everything we do. So having a timeline and identify deliverables is, not a bad thing or a bad way to operate. So we're trying to give you insight into that, and maybe you can use these processes and tools locally and engage your region and club members as well in doing so. Sorry, Suzanne, if I mispronounced your name. So someone is asking for an example of a project. I think, the best example that I would share, because we have the project manager of that project co-presenting with me today, I would use the region conference support. And that is a project. So each year, a project team, a cross-functional project team is formed to establish or identify what content we feel that we need to develop based on your input to support your region conferences. And the process wherein how that list of content is developed, how we engage our governors and get their input on that list of content, and then ultimately build the content, that is an entire project schedule in and within itself. So I think that is one of the most visible projects that most members and leaders, without even realizing that there's this engine running behind that work, that's one of the most visible projects I'd use as an example. Okay. Someone is asking, would you consider funding sponsors a stakeholder? Absolutely. So if you're speaking about fund development, Kristen, fund development leads a number of projects, and our contributors are key stakeholders in the projects that the fund development team leads. So absolutely, they would be a stakeholder. Are SIA members involved with PROSI or IAP2 training for project management and or stakeholder? Some members may be trained project managers. They may have the Prince2 certification. They may have the PMP or CAPM certification. They are not required to be certified in this work, to lead this work. I will share that I am a trained project manager. Members on the stakeholder engagement team and other staff members have been formally trained on project management processes and in stakeholder engagement as well, change management, and we apply those principles in that training to get the work of the Federation done. So Cheryl is asking, should projects also have measurable goals and objectives? Yes, we do define, Cheryl, what success looks like for our projects. And upon completion or launch, this will be in place, or these are the things you can expect to see. They may not be measurable, but we do measure our satisfaction. So I'll go back to the region conference project. We will assess satisfaction with the content we develop from that project, and we will react to the feedback received for the next year's region conference and setting forth or establishing what future content will develop or how we need to shift or tweak based on stakeholders' feedback. So someone is asking, how does the board interact with the projects? Do they approve the list or make recommendations? So the board approves the strategic plan, and indeed they do approve a number of projects as well. For those of you who aren't aware, we recently, or the board recently, made a decision or approved a decision to evolve Governors Roundtable to the Leadership Roundtable. And that is a major project that we will be working on this year. So to get that to that point where the Leadership Roundtable becomes a project, the board had to approve a number of they made a number of approvals to get us to this point where we're now launching Leadership Roundtable. And their interface with it is, they say, yes, we think this is a good idea. Yes, we like the feedback we're seeing, and it looks like the stakeholders are in support of it. So they're giving us this nod or approval as we're developing this concept of a leadership roundtable. And then finally, once it's agreed upon or been approved that we will do a leadership roundtable, the board ultimately approves the agenda for the leadership roundtable, pricing model for the leadership roundtable as well. And then staff develops all of those pieces per project management methodology, but of course, with the board's approval.
That's a good example, Aisha, of one of those multi-year processes. I think we started that 2 or so years ago, of bringing the information to the board, getting their approval to explore, is this something we should move forward with doing for the future, doing surveys, gathering information, how would it look, how would it be possible? And again, each step of the way, bringing that information to the board and getting it approved.
Yes, that was a multi-year project and we started researching and exploring pre-COVID. And we're going to be launching this fiscal year, but the board was engaged all along the way, and other stakeholders as well were surveyed and post. So the board doesn't get a list of projects and says, okay, yes, these are the projects. They approve the strategic plan, and then those projects move the strategic plan forward. But the board is engaged on those projects throughout the life cycle of those projects. So Diane says, you spoke to tools or spoke of tools that you use, but can you give us an example or a link to resources that club leaders can access for member engagement? So yes, we are going to share the presentation from tonight, and the examples we shared in the notes section of the presentation, there will be links where you can get to those examples. You can download them, or you can use them and build your own using that as a template. We usually build our own, but you will get those links. Someone asked, how do we keep the team, I'm assuming, Christy, you mean the project team, interested and productive? I'll let Nicole take that because she is probably leading a lot of projects. So she's a good person to answer that. And she's an amazing project manager.
Thanks, Aisha. Yeah, it's definitely, that's a good question. Because again, over time it can wane, and a multi-year project or something, or something that takes a while could, people's spirits may not be as enthusiastic. So I think keeping in touch with your team on a regular basis, whether that's giving updates or just checking in, that's always helpful. I think the communication is the key to keep everyone interested, to keep them going. As a project manager, checking in to make sure when you have a project, when you have a timeline or deadlines coming up, checking in before everything look good for, is that still on target to happen? If not, what can I do to help? So that helps keep everybody on track and moving forward as well.
Yeah. Someone is asking about, I think this is Suzanne Heron. Who would you say would be a typical stakeholders for a Dream It, Be It project? If if you want to deliver a Dream It, Be It project locally, obviously the stakeholders, one key stakeholder would be the end users, the girls who are going to be the recipients of that training, that curriculum. But I think the people working on it in your club could also potentially be key stakeholders as well, the members leading that work. But I think the primary stakeholder for a Dream It, Be It project is the end user, the girls, Suzanne. Your members would be the project team to make sure it's delivered, to get it done, to get that training delivered. So we have a comment or question from an anonymous attendee. Our club owns commercial property, so we have a few projects in our club. This is both a blessing and a curse. It is very difficult to get our members to participate in meetings, and projects are few and far between. So not real, I don't really see a question. I just see more of a comment. Engagement is an issue. Making sure you have engaged members to get this work done, to step up and lead this work and lead this effort. And oftentimes than not, it does fall on the leadership team of a club. So it doesn't mean you can't do it. It just might be that this helps the leadership team organize a little better if you want to apply some of these principles, if you're having an engagement problem getting other people at the table to do the work. But it can certainly make organizing the work easier if you apply some of these principles. Always a balance between board and staff. Good to hear. Yes, I think we do have a nice balance between the board and the staff. And I also think we work really well with the board. I think we have a great relationship with our board and get excellent feedback from them before we, start working on a number of these things that you see us talking about today. Stakeholder means member plus sponsor. So I would say, let's pull up the slide, Allison, so we can revisit stakeholder, because it is member, but let's talk more. I would like to just reshare that definition. It's not the sponsor. The stakeholder is not the sponsor. The stakeholder is the person or people who are going to be impacted by the work and have a vested interest in the work or the project. So stakeholder is the term used in most instances to refer to the individuals or group who have an interest or role in the project or who are impacted by it. So oftentimes for us, stakeholder is you, the members, and we segment members. So we don't just roll it up member, because different members have different roles. You could be a SIA board member, you could be a governor, you could be a governor-elect, you could be a region chair, club officer, and depending on what hat you're wearing in the Federation, you might have a different interest in the project. So that's why we segment. But this is what we mean by stakeholder.
Aisha, I just want to jump in. We had a question from Maritza, and I dropped it in the translation here. Asks, will these projects be an example of a big dream accelerator? I think maybe the big goal accelerator projects is what she may be asking here. And definitely, that's definitely a project that you could use this stakeholder engagement on 100%.
Yeah. So Cheryl is asking a question. Have you seen any trends in the best ways to identify or contact potential stakeholders? Postal letter, email, LinkedIn, social media, or face-to-face? We use all of those, Cheryl, except probably postal mail, not so much. We don't use postal mail, but we do a lot of surveying. We do leverage social media, and we leverage Best for Women and our blog posts to update and share. I think the most effective way is this: to get on a call, to have a Zoom, to have a face-to-face meeting, and to talk about what we would like, what our ideas are. and to let the stakeholder give us feedback on our ideas. We recently did that with our governors and governors-elect, and I think it was very productive. And I think we got very good feedback from them. So I think focus groups are very effective. And I can't wait till we do more face-to-face meetings so we can do more focus groups. So then someone asked, how to engage membership when they know that the money is there, even if they do not participate? I don't quite understand that question, so I'm gonna just speak to membership engagement and how you can engage your members. It's not a one-size-fits-all model, and it's using all the different vehicles that are available. And unfortunately, it involves repeating yourself a lot. You cannot say it one time and expect all your members to have heard that message the first time you said it. So you will find yourself being redundant. For the members who listen to us, they tell us, you say the same thing over and over. We heard you say that already. But the reason we say the same thing over and over is because even though we have some members who are very attentive and get it the first time, some don't. So you do find us repeating messaging, and you do find us being redundant sometime for that reason. It's our strategy to keep all members informed and engaged.
I think that's all the time that we have for questions, and I think we may have gotten through all of them as well.
I think we did.
Great. So thanks, everyone.
So we are excited to continue to offer you trainings like this, to hear from you, to share with you how we do our work. We share with us how you do your work as well. I'm always interested in hearing that. And continue to attend these trainings and keep engaged about the organization, your organization. We've worked hard to plan exciting content for you this fiscal year, and I hope that you take advantage of this benefit. Here's a snapshot of the trainings being offered to you this year. And there's more on the events page on our website, and I hope to see you at those trainings. If you have any questions, please reach out to Nicole or myself. And thank you for your time. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. We appreciate you joining us. Have a good day, good afternoon, good evening. And just want to add too, a big thank you for all of you who participated in our Giving Tuesday. That was yesterday. We greatly appreciate it. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for everything you do. And thank you for your support on Giving Tuesday.
Bye all.